you already got the book. Do you have any pencil bookstore and all that?
Right being registered.
Just down the hall. Just moving in boxes. But there's one here.
All right, we're going to get started. Welcome everyone in Millersville. I'm just going to start off by saying your son or daughter has chosen wisely. Millersville is a great place, it's a warm, inviting community, and I think they're going to have a wonderful time living and learning here as they transition from being a teenager to an adult. My name is Dr. Lisa House. I'm an assistant professor and a psychologist here at Millersville. I'm going on my 4th year here, and I'm really, really enjoying my time here at Millersville. It's my first time in Lancaster County when I took this job. So, I'd be open to talking about some of my experiences here, and moving here in a new environment, and sort of what I've experienced as a new faculty member. I'm here with Dr. Lynch, and I'll let him introduce himself.
My name is Joe Lynch. I'm also at the Counseling Center, and I'm a professor here at Millersville. I'm going into my 19th year, so I liked it here, so I decided to stick around. And I think you'll find that as you talk to people come here and they stay here. It's really it is an inviting and a warm community. We welcome you as parents, and we certainly welcome your children and adult children.
I should also mention, I don't know if I'm going to put Joe on the spot or not, but he's been in your position a couple years ago. He actually has a daughter who's here at Millersville. So feel free to pick his brain or ask him any questions you might want to as a faculty member and a parent of a student here in Millersville. So the title of the program today may sort of conclude that we're going to talk about what it's like for your students during their first 6 weeks here at Millersville. But we're going to take a little bit of a twist on that and talk a little bit more about the transition. It's a big milestone transition for your child becoming a teenager to an adult, moving away from home for the first time, transitioning from high school to college, and it's also a transition for you as parents. Your child is no longer going to be at your home, no more going to sporting games, driving them places, you have a car to yourselves now, less, you'll have, if those parents with other kids at home too, this is going to be a change for siblings. Many students come here worried about how their parents are going to do without them, how their siblings are going to do without them, particularly students who are coming from families where there's a single parent, or the last one to leave home. We also hear a lot from parents. They worry about, well, how am I going to keep in touch with the student? How can I be still a support to my child? And the answer is, your role is still really important. It's just going to change and be different now. And that's a little bit of what we're here to talk about, is how can we ease this transition, and how can you still be a supportive parent to your child. We're going to talk about different subject areas that we think will be important for you to have conversations with your child about before he or she comes to college. A lot of this is just based on our experience, working a lot with the students as well as working with parents. At this point, you've probably gotten a lot from the university. You may have a lot of envelopes with logos on it. I see many people with hats and t-shirts. So there are many signs that the semester is soon going to be starting. 6 weeks left until the semester, I think maybe 5 weeks until orientation for the students. And that time is going to go by really, really quickly. So I'd like to just start by asking you guys, what are you feeling as parents, thinking about your child leaving home and going to college? What are some feelings that come up? Okay, great. Go ahead.
Anxiety.
Sure. Anybody else? Joe, how did you feel when Shannon was leaving?
We had a mixed feeling. We were excited for her, but also nervous and worried about what kind of the future next step was going to hold. But it's kind of a balance with both of them. Not sure what was over the next hill, but excited what doors were going to open up for her.
Other folks? Anybody here just really excited to have their child out of the house? I mean, there's somebody being honest over there.
Like a staple.
Have you guys been hearing from your kids lately talk about college, what they might be feeling? Anyone want to express nervous?
The roommate issue is the biggest one right now.
just worried about how well they'll get along with their roommate.
Well, going from having your own large room to a half of a smaller room.
It's an adjustment.
Or a third of a smaller room.
A little bit
Anybody
of
else?
academic concerns, like how hard is it gonna be and that kind of thing.
Dr. Lynch can talk a little bit about that, but it's a big, big adjustment. High school to college, the load is very daunting.
And the time management issues as well. But from a structured environment to a less structured environment.
Right. So the point of those questions was just to let you guys think a little bit about how you as parents have a lot of same similar feelings as your child. They may stem from different reasons or different areas, but we hear a lot of excitement and happiness, yet nervousness, yet sadness and worry. And so we want you guys to just be open with your child, let them know it's okay to feel this mixed bag of emotions, normalize it for them, talk to them about it. Because if you can be open about it now, they'll feel a lot more comfortable, especially during those first couple weeks when it's hard for them to transition, talking to you guys about how they might be feeling. As I said before, we're going to talk about conversations we want you guys to have with your child. The first area is going to be surrounding values. So, what are your thoughts about sex, drugs, alcohol? Research consistently shows very important the parental values are in terms of how they reflect child values. Even though you may not see it or you're hearing different things from your child, it makes a difference. Your child is going to be presented with a lot of new people, a lot of new choices. They're going to be independent. And if you can talk to them beforehand about what it means to drink safely, what their thoughts are about drinking, are they going to be sexually active? I mean, they're uncomfortable subjects, but if you're able to talk to them about it, it will make a huge difference in the end. It will also help them to feel more comfortable talking to you about those types of things as they come up at college. Let's see. Be prepared for bombshells. Do we have any parents here who have children who are already in college or have been through the college system? Would you like to share? Have you gotten frantic phone calls home or realized that your son or daughter has made changes that you weren't expecting?
Yes. well, you're unprepared for it because, right, you live with the child for 17, 18 years. You think you understand what their personality is like, but then they transition to an environment. You don't have that day-to-day contact. You don't really know what's going on there. And you worry at times, like, okay, they're not calling you, so it's like, what's really going on there? You really don't have any recourse because of the FERPA Act. You can't just call the school and say, hey, how's my son or daughter doing? So you kind of hope for the best. And one of the situations had to do with a medical problem. I mean, it was really, unfortunate. It was just nothing to do with a choice he made. He just had medical emergencies, and having to deal with that when you're not able to, like, rush them over to the hospital, in the middle of the night, and realizing they're an adult, they had this figured out on their own. That was one thing. And another thing had to do, and I'll be honest with the group here. I mean, there was an alcohol-related. He was underage. He was going to a concert on campus, not this campus, by the way. And he got caught. And again, I had never thought about alcohol being an issue because it wasn't an issue in our house, growing up, and never associated this being one of those kind of kids, and maybe probably wasn't. But I was unprepared for that. That letter from the college saying, oh, by the way, your son was,
On probation.
on probation. So he learned from that. We learned from that, and now with our second son going in, we have our eyes open a little wider, to those kinds of things that come up.
And that's why it's important, if you, for example, with alcohol, talking to your child about alcohol is not going to make them drink or not drink. But if you can at least broach the subject, teach them about what's safe and not safe about drinking, they're going to drink, make sure they don't leave their drink unhanded, especially for girls, in terms of date rape drugs, make sure they drink 1 drink an hour, making sure the buddy system, all of those things. Even though they may not have drank in high school, it may come up in college, and it's just better to teach them what's safe and what's not right now. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you. Anybody else?
We emphasize that we know he's going to drink, at least a little. But we emphasize it up front.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because he is hard.
We hear sometimes from other parents when we ask that question from veteran parents, some of the things that they were surprised about is they have a child maybe coming home over fall break and they notice they have a new piercing or tattoo, or then maybe they're speaking to their child and said, oh, I wasn't in last night, I was sleeping over at my boyfriend girlfriend's. You know, there's a lot of things like that that are just like, wow, it's a shock, and it's surprising. One of the things that Dr. Lynch and I like to really point out that we think is important is that for you as parents, your child may think that you right away should be understanding and accepting of this new news, but realistically that's not the case. It's shocking and it's different and it takes time, and it's okay to tell them, you know, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I need some time and maybe some more information before I can be okay with that. Your child doesn't have that right to expect that right away you will agree with what they're doing or understand what they're doing. College is a big time where individuals are trying to figure out who they are, what their major is. They may change majors a lot of time, may change their religion, their values, their viewpoints, and it's back and forth. There are a lot of ups and downs. So you as parents have to find that balance of being supportive, being able to talk with them with empathetic concern instead of anger. And sometimes it's really hard to hold in that anger. But if you're able to establish that empathetic flow of conversation, again, they will talk to you more openly when they're in trouble, when they're having a hard time with different decisions. You talked a little bit about teachable moments. If you find out your son or daughter has a citation for alcohol use, talking to them about it, figuring out what they're going to be doing differently, what they've learned from that situation, maybe sharing some memories of when you guys were in college and you were faced with a difficult situation, or you made a mistake and how you learned from that mistake. All those can be really valuable lessons and information that your child will enjoy hearing. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lynch now.
I think somewhat related to that too is one of the things that's helpful now is for us as parents, you know, sending our students off, is to really think honestly about what are our expectations. Like, what are we expecting of them? You know, and if we're really honest, how many people are expecting A's? Come on, let's see A's. Yeah. All right. Expecting lots of study habits, expecting them maybe to date somebody just like me, expecting them to, you know, get 8 hours of sleep every night and make sure they're eating their feet. So really, I think it's helpful to really just challenge yourself with what are we expecting, and then try to turn that and say, okay, what's more reasonable? What's more realistic? Most of the time, the emotions are going to be all over. That's realistic. Often, especially that first semester, research bears out that what happens is that's the lowest GPA across the country, typically for students. Now, not with every student, but what that transition, you can imagine, as Lisa was saying, coming from high school, where a lot of them are used to not putting a lot of effort and getting B's. And then all of a sudden they come to Millersville and they think they can do the same thing. My daughter was one of them, and she failed a science class. And I was like, I could just barely, you know, choke that down. And all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, I have to realize she's her own person. She's now becoming an adult. And so rather than kind of explode on her, which is what her mom and I wanted to do, we had to sort of step back and really talk about that and try to create an atmosphere so that maybe later on down the road she would come with us to something else we do. So to try to have more reasonable expectations. In fact, the GPA is going to go up, and in fact, things like that will kind of move forward. Another big thing I find with parents is that a lot of them are expecting, well, we sent you pre-med, and now you're psychology? You know, changing majors is something that happens pretty often. It's not atypical. And so just to really be listening to what your students are saying. And I think if you can go in with reasonable expectations, that sort of helps on the other side. If your expectations are way up here, probably there's going to be a lot of disappointment. So I think that's one of the things that's really important, is just to think about what your expectations are. A big area too is finances. Okay? I don't know if you ever remember, this credit card is for emergencies only. Please be clear as to what constitutes an emergency. Dad, we even have money for beer. Okay? So things with finances are important. You guys are probably used to doing finances a certain way. You're hoping that those are values you're going to teach your sons and daughters. When they get on their own, sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. So again, if you can just talk to them, hey, this is what I'm expecting, this is what I'm hoping, here's what I can show you. Some of it they're gonna have to learn on their own. And when they spend, they buy that third pizza that week and all of a sudden there's not enough money for paying a credit card bill, you're gonna get that phone call. So again, try to make that and create that into a teaching role.
I was going to also add some of the logistics with finances. A lot of first-year students find it helpful when parents set up a bank, maybe bank account, finding a bank nearby. Those types of things as well are really important.
Right. And just not assuming that they will kind of do all of those things. Trying to kind of give them, hey, let's set this up, let's talk about this. Let's see if we can set up a budget for you. Trying to help them and teach them, share what your expectations are. These are the things that you know have already worked for you. And you know them. So you'll sort of see where their strengths and their weaknesses might be, and you can kind of step in accordingly. Communication is another thing, I think, with expectations. What are you expecting is going to happen? Are you expecting they're going to call you every day? Every week? Once a month? These are things that would be worthwhile talking before you send them on. Right? Now, oftentimes it might be every day or 6 times a day on some days, and then you're not going to hear from them for a long stretch of time. It's pretty annoying. And what we find is as students get more comfortable here at Millersville, it's very healthy to start to have less contact with home. Doesn't mean they care about you or love you any less. It just means that they're coming into their own person, they're individuated. That's really normal, healthy development. So talk about what that communication is. One of the things that used to be funny, the students would say, yeah, I called last Sunday, I was on the phone with mom, and all of a sudden I'm talking to mom and dad at the same time. And it's like, one at a time, like trying to really think about how you're going to do that. Texting is really popular now, Skyping is really popular, so there's lots of cool things or fun things out there, ways to keep in touch. But students really, I think, just want to know. They just really want to know what you're expecting. So trying to talk about that, I think, can be really helpful. Advice is another area that we really feel is useful for you guys to talk to students about. And I want to share something with you in my professional opinion and as a parent. I really want to encourage you to never, ever give up the right to give them advice. And I would encourage you to tell them, say right to them, Johnny, I'm always going to hold on to that right of mine to give you advice. What's different now is that you're no longer obligated to take it. Those parents say what? Okay? Think about what you're communicating to your son or your daughter when you say that. You're saying, you know what? I trust what we've done. I've given you some good routes. I've given you a good place to start. Now it's time for you to kind of try this on your own. That's a real powerful tool to hear from your mom or dad. You know what? I'm always going to reserve the right to give you advice, but from now on, you're not obligated to take it. I think that really communicates a lot of trust to them, and that's going to serve you really well as things kind of move along. With advice, what are some good things to give advice on? One of the big things we tell parents is, you've probably heard this before today, is really encourage them to get involved. What we find is a lot of students who come to Millersville or any college, when they struggle early, it's usually because they're isolating themselves. If they can get out of their rooms and get involved with some of the organizations or activities, now not 8 hours a day, but certainly something. So if you get some of those confused or sad phone calls, really trying to encourage them to kind of get involved would be really helpful. Regarding the roommate situations, another set of good advice is tolerance. Really encourage them to be tolerant. They're coming to a place like Millersville that's fairly diverse in many respects. They might run into folks from different cultures, with different ideas, play different music, when you get into the roommate situation. Really encourage them to try to be flexible, try to be tolerant. Really good advice. Things that would come to mind are getting some rest. We talked about how we don't want to expect too much, but if they're getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep, that's probably affecting everything else. Try to encourage them to get at least 6, if not 7 hours of sleep, although the student in the room will probably say, what are you doing? Sometimes that's difficult, but really encourage them to get rest. It's not to have pizza every night of the week, at all possible. Those are good things. Another really powerful tool, good advice, encourage them to get to know their professors. I think a lot of students come from high school and they're used to just going to class and leaving and doing whatnot. Getting to know your professors really can go a long way. So that's really some good advice to kind of encourage them to do. I want to spend just a minute. Do we have any community students, moms and dads? Okay, a couple. A couple good things about community students that we want to share with you is that remember this is going to be a transition for both. It isn't high school. It really is a different situation. You can almost think about it as if this is going to be their new job. Trying to create some opportunities for some space to be able to study, some flexibility, maybe if you're always used to having them come home for dinner, to be able to say, you know what, if you need to miss tonight because something's going on, trying to be a little bit more flexible. If the car is a mutually shared situation, trying to kind of encourage them so that they can feel somewhat comfortable with getting back and forth. Encouraging them to get involved. Sometimes our commuter students sort of are a little slower with that. But you know what? All of the activities here, all of the organizations, all of the resources are open to all students. My daughter came in a couple semesters from home, and she really found that when she connected into somebody on campus, that really makes a difference. We have a really awesome commuter house. They just renovated it, which is going to be here on campus. So encourage them to find where the commuter house is and do things like that. So just a few kind of tidbits for commuter students. Turn it back over to Lisa.
One of the things we hear a lot from first-year students is that they are homesick and they value getting stuff from home, whether it's a note, a care package. Of course, they love money. Don't we all love money? But little things like that go a long way. Dr. Lynch talked a little bit about communication, getting text messages, emails. That makes a big difference. Just hearing from you, knowing you care, even if they're too busy maybe to respond or write back or talk to you, goes a long way. A lot of college students have different hours than their parents, so using that technology of texting, Skyping, emailing can be a good way of communicating. Many parents also agree on the once-a-week call, the at least once-a-week call, so they set a time every Sunday, 1 o'clock, we talk, somewhere around there, and that tends to also be really helpful for students to kind of work you guys into their schedule. Be informed and interested about what's going on. So don't just ask questions about schoolwork, grades, finances. Talk a little bit more about their interests, relationships with other people, what activities they're involved in, jobs. I think with finances, I think that would be another expectation. Are they expected to work? If so, how many hours? That would be something else to talk to your child about. Are you going to give them an allowance? Are they getting $200 from you a month? Those types of things are important. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. Be patient, especially the first couple weeks. You might get phone calls home saying, I hate this place, don't want to be here anymore. Just try and stick with it as best as you can. It's hard for parents to hear all that distress in their child. Many times the next day, they're okay, and you've been up all night thinking about it. So just, again, that balance between being supportive, helping them solve their problems, but without solving them for them. Dr. Lynch is going to pass out one handout that summarizes a lot of the stuff we talked about. On page 2 of that is some information about the counseling center, and I'm just going to touch briefly on emotional health issues. Myself and Dr. Lynch are 2 of 5 licensed psychologists at the counseling center. We also have a part-time alcohol and drug counselor and a part-time psychiatrist. And that's one of the really unique assets I think about our counseling center is that if a student is seeing one of us, they're able to see our psychiatrist who works at Lancaster General Hospital and comes here one day a week. They're allowed to see him free of charge. So they can get free prescriptions, free medication management. All of our services are confidential, as well as their services with the psychiatrist will also be confidential. So if you live some distance away, your child is coming in on medication, they are able to come see us and even transfer that right to the psychiatrist in the counseling center, which makes it a lot easier for them to get med checks and things like that. Some of the things that are important to... Sure.
Do they take care of that on their own, or?
Yeah, we treat all students as adults. They are 18, so we can't force them to come here. We do consult a lot with parents, so you're able to call and consult with us. and we may help you be able to get your child in here. Sometimes we do have parents who will bring a child for a first session. We will encourage parents to reach out to RAs or GAs who know that process, or else who know them very well. They're available 24 hours, and they're very in tune to being able to bring students here or show them where our service is, things like that.
Sometimes it is absolutely necessary where a parent needs to be involved. We would just encourage you to talk into the process of getting a release. And then with the release of information, we can talk more openly. We really communicate a powerful thing to them when we say, we treat you as an adult. And that gives that sort of openness to the relationship. But most of them really don't hesitate to say, go ahead, you talk to dad, you talk to mom.
Now last year, and I think it's pretty typical, we see about 12% of the student body. So we see a large number of students. Go ahead.
You can continue, I'll wait.
I'm sorry.
I said, you can continue, I'll wait.
Oh, it's okay. I was going to talk a little bit about stress and how that's normal, and you may see mood changes, changes in appetite, irritability. That's okay. When these signs start to last more than 2 weeks, it could be a problem. If you start seeing other symptoms such as expressing not wanting to live, uncontrollable anger, withdrawal, no longer going to class, not hanging out with friends, along with some of the other things I talked about, you need to act on the side of caution. We always stress that even if it's not an emergency, just err on the side of caution. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among college students. So we always just want to make a little shout out about that because it's really, really important.
My son's on a prescription medicine. Can he get the prescription filled anywhere around here?
Yes.
I mean, he won't need it filled for the first time, or he will need refills.
Yeah. So what students will do, our psychiatrist would.
It's not for that kind of an issue.
Okay, so just in general? Yes, he would get into, I think, Wiley's for, and there's a CVS, both nearby. Depends what, if you guys belong to a CVS, you could just have it transferred through CVS to the CVS nearby. And I think Wiley's is in walking distance. Our health services, I'm not sure what, they do some prescriptions there, but.
We learned earlier that if you register Wiley, they will ship it, deliver it for free to the health services.
There you go.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions regarding our services? Or?
Do you have to register with you guys? Like if you know your child's on the spectrum and needs to see psychologist, they need these.
Just call and they'll say, if you look at our website, there's all of our names and our specialties. So someone can call and request an individual, or basically most students just call. Our secretary will ask you for email or mail. They say yes or no, and then whatever best fits their schedule, that's how it goes. The students are free to change counselors if they find that the one they're reading with is not a good fit. Talk a little bit about alcohol and drug use.
It came up a little bit earlier, we talked about alcohol and other drug use. It's important enough to sort of say, spend at least another minute on it here. What we have found is that students, believe it or not, are interested in what you feel and think about their use of alcohol and drugs. They really are. We want you to create a talk pool in your family. Oftentimes, why some of the issues come up with alcohol and other drugs is because it's such an uncomfortable topic, it never gets talked about. A lot of things can be avoided or doors open for talk and discussion if you can kind of set that talk rule up. You know, you're driving on the way to Millersville, or you're sitting in the car one day and you just basically say, hey, you know, I want to talk to you about some things that maybe you haven't thought about, but that Mom and I really have something we'd like to share with you. Matter of fact, the research bears out that moms, what you say actually holds quite a bit of weight as far as alcohol or drugs is concerned. So if it's something that's uncomfortable for you, trying to get through that uncomfortableness really will go a long way, just to create that talk pool so that they know if the issue does come up, they can kind of easily come to you and approach it. The other thing we want you guys to know is that a lot of times the stereotype is that college is just one drinking student. And Millersville is not like that. Matter of fact, we have some really powerful statistics we wanted to share with you a little bit. Some of them are on the cards that you're looking at. Some of the things that are really, I think we feel really good about is that there's 69% of students that when they socialize, they drink 0 to 4 drinks. Binging is supposed to be 5 or more in a sitting. So most of our students, almost 70% of them in our last survey, basically reported that they either drinking nothing, 1, 2, or 3, or 4 most drinks during a couple hours. That's a healthy way to deal with alcohol on campus. So most of our students are kind of listening to that. The other thing that I think you'll find interesting on there is that over 70% of students, like, they don't care for students who just get wasted for the sake of getting wasted. That's what their attitudes are. And the most powerful one I really like to share is that 1 of 4 of our students have never drank. We have a lot of students on this campus that they don't drink. So if that's where your student is coming from, they can find that population. There's really a lot of things going on. We encourage them to get on the website. As a matter of fact, they have a lot of things Thursdays and Friday nights specifically to give students things to do so that they don't have to be forced into or peer pressure to drink. So it does exist here. If you can create a talk rule, tell them what your expectations are, have them kind of realize that there's a lot of students making a lot of good choices on campus too. Finally, we just kind of want to wrap things up very quickly by saying a lot of attention right now is going to be focused on your students. But we want you guys to realize this is a time for celebration for you too. Take this time to do something fun or different after they leave. If you're feeling a little sad or lonely or upset about that, maybe find somebody else in your church or your community who also sent a child on their way. Go have lunch with them. Go have breakfast with them. Talk about it. Let yourself kind of talk with your spouse, with